Hey everyone, Coach Patrick here from Endurance Nation. Today we're bringing you a very special interview podcast, an opportunity to sit down with an elite athlete, an elite cyclist who has been conquering mountains, roads, terrain on two wheels for the better part of the time that I've been an adult. He is still crushing it today, and he's moved his challenges beyond the norm. His name is Jeremiah Bishop. I was super pleased to have him here. He was a great interview. We touched on some really important things. Most importantly, for him, the Impossible Route, which is a project he's undertaken with the Vegan Triathlete. And he's been doing some epic stuff, climbing mountain volcanoes in Hawaii, doing Death Valley, and having 3 or 4 more challenges set up for this year as well. In this episode, we discuss quite a few things. We talk a little bit about the adventure spirit. We talk about the beginner mindset. We unpack in great detail how he goes about planning a route, including some neat ways to use Strava that even I hadn't thought of, which I'm super impressed with. Overall, super engaging, super fun. The kind of guy that you would probably see riding when you went out to work in the morning, and then when you got home, he went riding back in the other direction, and you're like, oh, hey, the guy on a bike. And then later on, you'd say, wait a minute, that's the same guy on the bike. But he's found a way to support his athletic endeavors and combine it with an energy and a passion that just really, I think, not only sustains him, but is also just great for the sport as a whole. And that's coming out in the Impossible Route product that he's putting together. And you can definitely check out the videos, and I'll put some of those links in the show notes below. This episode was in also honor of launching the Phoenix Challenge Double Century Ride, June 11th and 12th down in Front Royal, which is a project we're undertaking. You can learn more about that project, how you can join us at www.werise.com. It's the Phoenix Challenge, werise.com. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoy this open, rambling, and just super laid-back episode with the one and only Jeremiah Bishop. Thanks, folks.
So, that was yesterday. 8 hours, flatted. I'm like on the side of a mountain, like, pumping my tire. And but I got here. It was good. It's good.
That's good. Were there any deadlines associated with your travel, or were you,
Dark.
they kind of know who you are, so.
Dark.
Okay, dark. That's a good one. I like that. I've had my issues with that.
Yeah, don't want to get stuck in the dark. Other than that, not yesterday. Sometimes I'm like trying to make a meeting, and it's really funny, different the ride will be if I'm like have to be somewhere at a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
Then it gets a little bit, different. You're like head down, and you're not stopping to take pictures or look at the flowers, and I kind of have different modes. People who know me know I'm a sightseer. I like to stop and look at the flowers. I like to, kind of take in the places that I'm riding in. But then also, I've athletic side where I'm really focused on the training. Focused on these sort of KPIs or key performance indicators that improve training and move the needle, so to speak. So I've kind of got these two hats that I wear, sort of thing, and it's pretty funny that I've kind of got this dual personality. But they coexist. Because I let them take over, and then I switch back to the other one I need to.
Okay. I think just given what you do, right? Like these rides, the Impossible Ride and all of that, like, I think there has to be that piece, right? Like, who wants to be on a bike for 6 hours? Well, if it's an awesome adventure, then I'm going to go check out this mountaintop, right? So it kind of fits that way, right?
It works. I've sort of discovered this new layer to my riding, which I think is the really neat thing about having ridden and competed for so long is that I've gone through these different phases. And the middle phase is, the action, the excitement. It's the adrenaline you get into as a 20-year-old racing mountain. You win, you lose, you try harder to win, you train better. It's very much like a basketball game. But then as my, career evolved, I started to get into more different styles of riding and different, places to ride. And I really like the ultra endurance stuff. I really love the stage races. So I became really focused on doing these stage races on the side. They were tangent to my race career as a cross country athlete. So they were, Sometimes, the teams didn't like it very much when I would go and moonlight and go do Breck Epic or Transylvania Epic or
Okay.
Roulette or the 100-mile National Series events. They were kind of annoyed because the big show is at the cross country Olympic distance events, and
Hmm.
sometimes they'd show up a little tired, for
Yeah.
the keep here and there, and sometimes they'd show up blazing,
Hmm.
and it was sustainable for me. I had to find sustainable. I had to find what I love to do. And
Hmm.
it's a big part of how I'm able to do it up here at the ripe age of 45, still doing some kick-ass stuff and still taking
Totally.
R's and KOMs. So, and then I had this, stint where I raced professionally in
Hmm.
the endurance field. And that was most recently with Toe Peak Ergon and the Canyon Toe Peak Factory Racing marathon squad. So I transitioned from a cross country only squad to doing these marathon races,
Hmm.
marathon world championships, tons of marathon national championships, Transalp, Andalusia bike race, Cape Epic.
Hmm.
Uh, yeah. And then, of course, the North American stage races, Pisgah stage race, Transylvania Epic, BC bike race I did once.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, as far as in the main body of America, the sort of southern 48. I was, on a tear there. I had 12 race wins in a row for stage races between Pisgah Stage Race, Breck Epic, um, and Transylvania Epic, which was, it wasn't really like focused on that as a goal. But as I got closer to 10, I was like, okay, wow,
Hmm.
I won 9 of these in a row, of this 3 stage races. Why don't I try to go for 10?
Hmm.
So anyway, it's kind of a fun game, and it takes
Yeah.
a whole level of focus, but you really have to be dialed to
Hmm.
win. For one, equipment wise, you have to be flawless. So to win 10 or more stage races consecutively, it's like carrying a basket of eggs on a marathon.
Right.
It's you're gonna drop one. It's a matter of time.
Hmm.
Eventually, did drop the ball at Pisgah Stage Race. Thomas Turner. Uh, I wouldn't say he beat me. I beat myself. That is the way I would call that end of that streak.
Taking
Uh,
notes. Yep.
yeah, I just switched tubeless sealant from stands to orange seal, and the
Mhm.
orange seal I think works a little bit better for bigger punctures. But also, there's the caveat that I wasn't really aware of, and that it'll actually work so well it'll seal the valve core
Valve. Oh.
and the stem. And so, what it'll sometimes do, and you have to just maintain it. It's just a thing you learn the hard way.
Hmm.
Uh, I didn't clean out the valve stem. I just been using the valve stem, put new sealant in.
Hmm.
Anytime you sealant, you should clean the valve stem out or replace the valve stem. And it kind of sealed in a slightly open position, so it lets a little air leak out, even though it's
Hmm.
cranked down. Um, so that lost me. It was like a 6-minute flat, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. It burned through the CO2. I'm using the hand pump, and
Hmm.
then I back about 5 of those 6 minutes, maybe 4.5 of those 6 minutes down throughout the stage. But Thomas won
Hmm.
and was riding on and at a very very high level, and that's my little story.
I love it. Well, I think I definitely want to talk a lot about that. Like the part about the I for my audience, right? Most of them are endurance athletes for sure, but certainly not at that competitive level. And when I was doing some research for the podcast today, I was like, I didn't even know half of these races existed. And so like A, I'm mad because I didn't know, just to be like, there's a whole nother world out there. But
Yeah,
B,
yeah.
I'm also like now I'm super intimidated by what's normal sort of in your world. So I guess when you talk about like a marathon team and the marathon race, what does that mean? Could you kind of give us some details on that?
On the team itself, or
Like what the race is like? Is that 100 miles? Is it 150 miles? Like what does it mean?
so marathon is the European vernacular for long distance mountain bike races. They're typically
Okay.
between 4 to 6 hours.
Mm.
So a big distance cross country, if you look it up in Wikipedia, It's 90 minutes. It's a very finite format. It's like a tennis match
Okay.
or a ball game, very, finite time type of course. It's lap courses,
Mm-hmm.
number of kilometers, and there's a World Cup circuit and Olympics and,
Mm-hmm.
continental championships. But those are sort of the marquee events. US Cup has a series. And then the marathon races are a little bit more globally distributed.
Okay.
And you'll have events like the probably some of the bigger marathon races that we do are like Roc d'Azur in France, like sort of like the maritime area of France.
Okay.
And they have 40 to 60,000 people. And a lot of it is participant based, so this big festival, and then several thousand people will do the mountain bike race. But it's also very similar to marathon running in that you compete the same time as the pros in most of these races. So that's where that sort of strange nomenclature comes. I always loathe the term marathon mountain biking because, of course, in the US it means running. Marathon is a run, but in Europe it's a style. Sort of like Grand Fondo is a European style of century, or in Britain they call them a sportif. So. Yeah. Anyway, so this, these teams sort of sprung up as specialist teams. The Bulls had one of the top teams in the world at the time when it was really kind of booming. And then, these stage races. The stage races have a mix of distances, just like the Tour de France. You'll have short stages, like a time trial might be only 20K, but then you might have 110-kilometer stage, like a Queen stage with 10,000 feet of climbing or 3,000 meters of climbing. And so I raced on a team that was solely, our job was the long distance stuff, and which was really cool because I got to just change my my focus from short and fast to long and strong. So it's super, super cool. I was I guess I'm the only U.S. rider to get a podium at Transalp. Even have a stage win at Transalp, which is a race from Germany to Italy, stage race style, and have been top 3 in the Cape Epic on a stage. Got close to winning, but close only counts in horseshoes and right. But yeah, so probably for 6 years I was on that team. Super cool, to be racing with the top riders in the world, all career athletes, world champion, European champion, Christian Heineck. So we had world champion Alpine Christian Heineck. We had European champion Sally Bingham. Myself, I was like, and I'm good, but I'm not like the best in the world. Honored to race on the number 1 team in the world for several years. For several different disciplines. And we had Eric Kleinens on board. We had he's a South African rider, and we also had Robert Mennen on that squad while I was on it. He was German national marathon distance champion, as well as Cape Epic winner. So yeah, I mean a banner squad, super cool. And it's just really been an awesome evolution in my career, and really a fun one in which I get to play pro, but then also I try to be really relatable with the average riders and the average athletes, and the real message for my career, I think, to others is that active and healthy lifestyles, they're something that they're sustainable. As you get older, you find just different ways different ways to stay active and healthy.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think part of what I want to talk about today is that the transition you made, obviously last year, no real races. So with your creative, adventurous streak, you decided to come up with some self-directed, unique versions of So I'd be curious to know, when you set out to do these impossible rides, were you just saying, what's the dumbest thing I could think of? Or were you saying, I've actually had some of these roads in mind, or how did that work?
Well, the impossible route, Mauna Kea, really the first impossible route came up as an idea to just do something different. I've been racing for a long time, and the race course is always the same.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's point A to point B, usually the same competitors.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm looking to do something fun and different. Anyway, so before COVID hit, I had already planned on doing this thing. I called up my buddy, the vegan cyclist. He has got a massive, massive following, you know, 100,000 subscribers plus on YouTube. And some of his videos have over 1 million views. And I was like, you know, this is a way that we can actually share with people. You know, a big thing that I like to do with endurance sports is to share the stoke with people, share the excitement, and share some of the places that we get to ride. And I've always wanted to do the world's biggest hill climb or world's toughest hill climb, which, according to all the research, was Mauna Kea. But something interesting happened as I was doing research. I got in touch with, you know, former elite level road cyclist Alex Candelario, and told him about our idea to do this, you know, pretty traditional route up Mauna Kea. And it's like, well, you know, you guys should just do the impossible route. That's what you should do. And I'm like, the impossible route?
You're like, ding, ding, ding.
I was like, you know, I heard about it. You know, Canyon makes awesome gravel bikes.
Yeah.
But it looked to be a much, much more fun ride. You go through these different climate zones. You go through a grove of these endangered trees, like halfway through this cathedral forest. You go into the high alpine steppes, and then you get into this alpine tundra and snow-capped volcano. So you really have a much more beautiful way to see the land and to really appreciate the island. As well as also, it's just badass. It's just really hard. No one's ever done it. And I don't know. It was like a dare. I was kind of like your buddy. He's like, hey, you know, I bet you can't run 30 miles. And you're like, well, yes, I can.
Right.
You know, that's how these things start.
Okay. Wow. I watched the video. That's what I was doing yesterday. When we were trying to connect, and I was like, I watched this video and I'm like, okay, let me skip ahead. And I was like, oh, okay. Like road, like, okay. Green forest to your point, like, okay, road again. Okay. Not a road, but it's pretending to be a road. I'm like, okay, now we're on the moon, like totally on the moon, like no idea. Then there was like 7 minutes of vegan cyclists, like laying on the ground. I was like, click, click, click. I was like, what's going on? I was like, that's insane. You know, I think what I liked about it, and, you know, hearing you talk as well, it's like that perfect intersection of athleticism, but also the part you talk about for adventure. You know, I think when you can find those rides that bring those two pieces together, how awesome, right? Where you're just like, because you have the routes that you like to ride, you kind of know where the picturesque spot's going to be. But when you have an opportunity to be surprised by that, you know, you must have just been, I think probably like almost like spiritually exhausted, right? By the time you were done, you're just trying to remember all the things you saw. I guess in a way you're super lucky they were videotaping it, because you could be like, I forgot about that.
Yes, that the interesting thing is we did most of the videography ourselves on that one. So It was a very low budget and rusty presentation. And I think when you see the impossible route, Death Valley, it should be mind blowing how spectacular the video is visually. But yeah, you're 100% right. A big part of it was this emotional exhaustion of, you know, trying to keep on course. No one's ever ridden it. If we take a wrong turn and we go off the course, poof, there's the whole effort, because it's such an exhausting thing that if you know, hit a major roadblock, you're not going to be able to make up that time and still make it to the top before dark. One of the things we really didn't do well in the video was explain that the access road to the top closes dark.
That would have been good to know.
Yep.
And they're pretty serious about that in Hawaii too. They don't mess around.
The gate closes. The gate closes. That, and it's also in the teens with howling winds up there at night. So during the daytime, like when I got up to the top, it doesn't look like it because I don't have a ton of clothes on, but it's literally 39 degrees, howling wind, and the sun is still up. And then as soon as the sun drops, it's just really dangerous place to be. I really dissuade a lot of people who think they're going to go and do this and then turn around and ride down because it's really deep sand, really dangerous descent. And just the climb itself is no joke. You have to just be prepared for it. You have to be ready for it. And not to say that a guided version of it wouldn't be awesome. If you worked with tours, you broke it down to 2 days, you camped at the sort of base camp before the final ascent.
Okay.
And then you got driven down, or something like that. 2 days would be really, really hard.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, still, right? I can't imagine.
Quite doable.
All right.
Well,
how'd you do? I'd be curious. How'd you do like the gear? Like, because you mentioned, I've been in Hawaii and I remember, being at the resort down on the beach and I'm like, oh, look, it snowed because you can see on top of the volcano, it snowed today, and meanwhile I'm getting sunburned. What did that even look like? Like, or did you just kind of roll the dice? Oh,
no. It's a lot of planning.
Mm-hmm.
Just like alpine climbers, there's a reason in alpine climbers, they start their ascents at 1 a.m. And that's because it's a combination of things. But, when you're at low elevation, your coolest temperatures are around daybreak. And so if you start during that time, you're going to be less apt to sweat all of your fluids out. You're also going to maybe need a jacket until the sun warms up. So it's really one of those things that really works in tandem with your ascent.
Okay.
So there's a lot of logic to it. And, when we were looking at the wind conditions, when we were looking at, just the amount of time we'd be out there, we knew we wanted to start around daybreak for this one. We probably would have been smart to start earlier, but also I wanted to capture the sunrise in the Waimea Canyon or Waimea Bay because it's just phenomenal place. There's black sand beaches and palm trees. It just looks like paradise. It's just really a unique place. So we didn't really want to rush it, so to speak. But that video really clicked. It resonated with a lot of people. It was also COVID because, people were kind of locked in their house and they kind of need something positive and inspirational to watch. And so between the main episode and the tertiary episodes and, my YouTube channel, the whole thing got about 500,000 views between that and social media. And we got to brainstorming and we're like, well, why don't we do another one? And then Devin with Canyon, he was like, well, it would be neat if it were actually a series because then they could build off of each other and maybe you can do several more expeditions and it's not a one and done. It sort of creates a story arc. And I was like, let's do that. And so here we are, a year later, we've done Impossible Route, Death Valley. We've got Trans-Appalachian Lost Roads. We've got Glacier to Teton coming up end of June. And then, in July, we're looking to do 3 volcanoes, the Cascades. So, it's sort of become this really fun project in which we're really trying to reach people that are maybe just even marginally interested in cycling because it's really a bit of reality TV meets bikes. It's a fun inspirational story where it's just about overcoming the obstacles, really identifying with places that people really don't think to ride. That's another thing that this all of the routes have in common is they're really looking at places that are seldom ridden. And then we're hoping to really give people resources to help them take on their own impossible routes.
That's awesome.
We've got 2 coming up with Strava. Okay. So I've got a meeting on Monday with Strava and we're going to do 2 sort of challenges and then have some contests. We're also going to have a contest where you go to canyon.com and basically register to win a free Canyon Grail and prize pack with Apodora bags, IRC tires, flow formulas,
Wow.
premium subscription for Strava, and yeah, it's really going to be cool. And Eliel jersey, so it's really neat. So we got this, yeah, kind of little ecosystem there.
Yeah.
Check out theimpossible.routes.com.
Okay.
So the route.com is sort of the website that we're building out. It's going to have a link to the maps, the sort of story maps that we're putting together, and then also resources for preparing for sort of these, bike packing adventures or big day trip adventures. I think it's just a fun world. And it's interesting is we're not total experts on it. That's the funny part too.
Yeah, that's the best part.
I think it's fun because, we're going to mess some stuff up. We made some mistakes in Death Valley expedition. Luckily, it didn't cost us. We're still alive. So,
that used to be our training camp end of ride thing. We'd be like, hey, nobody died. Like, see you next week.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Exactly.
All right. ImpossibleRoutes.com. I love it. Well, I think, I think also just to go to that, I think it's really authentic for you to do that. Like, so I think when cyclists on their own, like average person is going out for a big ride or a session, there's an element of adventure for them, even though it's, just down the road or they're going to the next town or whatever, right? Just being out on your bike is adventure, right? I think part of what's really neat about this is, like someone might look at you and be like, God, this guy, like he's done all the things, like he's an amazing athlete, but you're putting yourself intentionally in a position where you're at a disadvantage because it's a road, it's a place that hasn't been ridden before. So it's a great equalizer. And I think it brings a real connection to the viewer to say, hey, this is, you're experiencing it on camera. I can see you're kind of like, not sure what to do. And everyone can identify with the, like, what time is sunset again? Like, that's a great question. Like, that's like the, that's like your t-shirt, right? Like, it's not like, hey, what time is it? Or like, how far did you go? It was like, what time is sunset again? Like, we better get our act together. Oh no, I lost him. Here, we'll get him back. Don't worry about it. We're good.
All right. Where were we?
I'll be editing anyway to make myself look somehow stronger, but also lighter than you, and somewhat grizzled. So don't worry. I got all these filters. Well, I was just kind of talking about that connection back to the everyday rider, which I think is what's really unique about this series. Like sometimes you look look at a Red Bull video, right? You look at these dudes, they're doing backflips in South America, like I'm like, okay, that's awesome. That's like zero identity with that, right? But I think what's great about the Impossible route is it's you riding a bike, and anybody can ride a bike. So I think there's just a world of opportunity there. So I think what you're building is really, really cool. I do have some questions for you.
Sure.
Selfishly, part of the reason we're talking about this is I'm trying to organize this ride down there on Skyline Drive, get people to kind of go out and back. We call it the Phoenix Challenge. Like go out there, crush yourself and then come back, rise from the ashes. I'm just curious if you have any from the times you've ridden it or any experience around that. Yeah, anything you'd highlight for people who are looking to do that?
100%. Which way are you guys? You're starting in Front Royal or starting?
That's right.
Got it. So Front Royal, to go out and back it's kind of feels a bit different because when you're departing and coming out of Front Royal is a massive climb, really big climb.
Okay.
And then returning, coming back, you don't have quite that massive climb at the turnaround. So I feel like the way back should hopefully be a little less punishing, but then also it's better to have a little bit of the harder stuff up front.
Yeah.
So, I've actually never done it out and back. It sounds
okay.
Sounds like a great challenge.
Oh, great, sure. Awesome. Like note to self, like craziest person I know on a bike says no. All right. Another question I got was just riding different bikes, right? So like I think a lot of times athletes will kind of pigeonhole themselves. Like I'm a triathlete or in this case now popularity, I just ride gravel. And, I think there's, anything with two wheels, I'll ride it. Like if it's awesome, I'd be just curious to know how do you manage that across the season? Aside from your events, obviously you've got some specificity, but do you mix it up or what do you do?
Oh yeah, totally. For the DIY try, I was riding a Speedmax in the fall, which, I think you gain a lot when you switch modalities and you switch bikes and you switch activities.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that it's good for your head. It's fun to take on a different challenge.
Mm-hmm.
It's really fun to be beginner at something. It's
Mm-hmm.
fun to learn, the equipment, and you feel like a
Mm-hmm.
kid, and you're like holding these
Yeah.
gravel tires, and you're trying to figure out which one is. Well, this one they say it rolls faster. This one gets better reviews, but then find out that it's all irrelevant to you because you need to have the one that'll fit on your bike.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like really fun. It's kind of this kind of this game. And I feel like for me, since most of my career was racing, this bike packing stuff, I mean, it's kind of cool. Like where do I put the bags?
Mm-hmm.
We got this Apodura like kind of chalk bag thing. Kind of looks like what chalk bags that the climbers use.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, well, where do we even put these things? We're standing there in the desert in Yuma, like, okay, well, I guess I'll put it behind the handlebar and I'll put water bottles in it. And the guy from Apodura is like, yeah, well, that's not what people usually do with those, but that's cool. So, our beginnerism also was kind of the invention of some different ways to use this stuff. And I think that for people out there who are taking on these longer, personal challenges, win-win. You can put aero bars in your gravel bike if you want,
Right.
Nobody telling you how to do it. The cool thing is you can do it however you want, and you don't have to sleep in a ditch on the side of the road. You your credit card and ride, all the way down the Parkway in Asheville. You could stay at the Biltmore if you get a massage and then ride back. I mean,
that sounds good.
Yeah, I mean, that's it's not all, it's not all what someone else says it should be. You're right to be what you want it to be.
Yeah.
And same thing with your challenges.
I love it. I think, I remember back in the day, the first time I did an adventure ride, like in that same vein was with a buddy who was like, hey, we're going to do this ride to, I can't remember the heck it was, somewhere out in Western Mass. I knew it was hilly, and I was like, oh, we'll never, like, we can't get back from there. And he's like, oh, we're going to stay out there and then come back. And I was like, what do we do to carry stuff, And since we were, dorking out, he was like, literally, he shows up at my house with a box. I'm like, what's this? He's like, put your clothes in here. He's like, I'm mailing it today. It'll be there. I'll tell the hotel to hold it. And you show up and like, hey, you got a box? Like, sure, there's my box. You could hang out, go back, put stuff in the box, have them mail it back. Yeah, that was just the first, like for me, I was like, wait, you can do that? Like, I didn't even think about like, there's a whole network of packages. Like they'll take care of that for you, and hotels, like you said,
it's amazing. And, even there you have the best laid plans, right? So you could have your stuff sent, and then your first day is great. Your second day, you're like, oh my gosh, we're here and there's nothing. There's no shoes, no clothes. And then all of a sudden you're like out down at the Dollar General getting some flip flops, some stale like Bermuda shorts, like I love grandma sweatshirt.
Okay. I love that shirt. Hey, next time we talk, you're gonna have to wear that. I'll say sometimes what I'll do, like my family, we live here on the East Coast, so we'll go watch the Boston Marathon. I've run it a couple of times. Yeah. So what I'll do is it's like a 90-mile trip. I'll ride from my house up to my sister-in-law's place. My family will drive, and then we'll go out and watch. And one year I was late, so I got in a little bit of trouble, right? So we were trying to time it with the athletes. You want to be there to see the athletes go by. So the next year, my wife was like, if you're going to do that dumbass thing again, go early. So I was like, okay, I'll go early. And that was actually worse because I got to my sister-in-law's at like say an hour and a half early, but I was freezing. I got poured on. It was raining. It was cold. So I was like, I got to take a shower. So I hop in the shower, and then I'm in the shower. And then I realize that my wife has my clothes in the car, and she's not going to be here for an hour. So I spent an hour in my sister-in-law's bathroom. My mother-in-law's like, where's Patrick? What's he doing? Like, and I'm like, I'm in here. Can't see me.
Yeah.
Don't even come in here. So stupid. You got to have that perspective, though. I'm sure, like you mentioned, sort of that adventure or beginner mindset of just being like, I'm just going to have to laugh this one off because it's ridiculous.
Great though. Right? The sort of like average races. I kind of forgot probably half the races I've ever done. to be
Mm-hmm.
honest. I
Right.
mean, they might have been memorable to some other people for different reasons, but the adventures like that, unforgettable. Like those
Mm-hmm.
things that are just wacky,
Mm-hmm.
something crazy happens. Honestly, those happened in training. So I think some of my training sort of shenanigans have
Mm-hmm.
superseded my races. And I
Okay.
think that's, again, the possible routes message and the style of it is exactly that. It's just
Mm-hmm.
all the best stuff. And I mean, sure, maybe a race will fit into an impossible route where we like ride to a race and it's 300 miles away or something crazy like that.
Mm-hmm.
But, the racing is, the racing is kind of its own thing. And I'll still race
Mm-hmm.
because I like races, but this sort of is a strange opportunity in a way that it pulled me away from the races long enough so that I could see what I was missing.
Mm-hmm.
And some of what I was missing was, the incredible, world that we ride in. And it's the
Mm-hmm.
backdrop usually for races
Right.
and foreground for these
Mm-hmm.
events.
Yeah, especially I think for, coming from the triathlon side, the races that the portion of the bike is really dictated by the parameters of, the event. They got to set a certain distance. It's got to be easy to navigate for the support vehicles and put volunteers out there. So we train up in Lake Placid a lot. And I remember I've ridden that course so many times. I don't want to talk about it. And then I remember one time I was with someone else and he was like, "Oh, we followed." This is what it was. We saw a roadie and we were like, "What's that guy going?" He went right instead of left. Like, you can go right. We followed this guy and like the minute we were off the course, it was the most beautiful road. It was like nobody ever gets on this road, and
Yeah,
all the roads around there. And I couldn't. It never occurred to me to just go right instead of left. So I
yeah,
think that's always sort of eye opening for folks is that exploration side to do that. So I did have a question for you about exploration.
yeah, for sure.
I'd love for you to kind of break down a little bit how you go from the process of saying like, hey, I'm going to leave my house and I'm going to go there, and then how you say what's the methodology that you use, right? So as an example,
Mm-hmm.
I've run a bunch of training camps down in Boone, and my
Yeah,
some of those athletes will tell you there's always some gravel because Coach Patrick didn't see that part of the route. So one year I sent them up this hill. I remember the name of the hill, but they'll never let me forget it.
yeah,
Uh, because I was like, I looked at it and I was like, oh, but people ride that in Strava, so it's
yep,
got to be okay for bikes, and not really realizing they were not on triathlon bikes.
yeah.
Um, so how do you solve for that? Like, what's your process?
That's a good question, and that's one
Mm-hmm.
of the things that I try to bring into the impossible routes,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of this bit of education. And so that's going to be in our behind the scenes quite a bit.
Okay.
But the process really comes down to um, parameters of your equipment, and so
Mm-hmm.
you have these. What I call like different grades when you come to road surface and
Mm-hmm.
on up to gravel. It's great we've got these new bikes.
Yeah.
However, if I'm on my air road with like my deep dish DT 110, the arc wheels, I mean, they're like, huge. You got these long valve stems. If you flat this little skinny 25 tire,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be hating it. It's kind of a really rigid bike. I mean, on the
Mm-hmm.
road, it's like flat out super fast,
Okay.
but not no bueno on sharp gravel. And
All
Boone,
right.
I've been there. They've got a lot of like granite based gravel, so it's really sharp. You'll
Mm-hmm.
get this in New England, some Mid Atlantic, or at least where I live in Harrisonburg. It's a lot of limestone gravel, so it's more like packed dirt roads. So it
Okay.
rolls, and so it's very different depending on where you go. So yeah, knowing the bike that you have, for one, of course, is like
Mm-hmm.
a big piece of it.
Right.
But then when I set out to do an adventure, especially in an unknown area, I think that's probably the most applicable for folks is that you kind of have this ability to take a look at um, several different areas. And so
Mm-hmm.
what I'll do is I'll look at Ride with GPS. I'll look at Strava.
Mm-hmm.
Strava's heat map is extremely useful.
Okay.
And my favorite is actually the Strava route builder, which
Right.
allows you to take a estimated route and then draw it with your finger on the map app, and then it goes and uses the heat map and thousands of people's downloads to determine which route to take. I think it doesn't always differentiate between the gravel and the pavement perfectly. So it works really well with a gravel bike, I would say. Yesterday was awesome. Gave me some really neat, cut throughs I'd never seen before. There was a little stream crossing. I popped up on the other side and it was perfect gravel. It's super cool. The other thing I recommend for folks to do is look at Google Street View. Google Street View. So what you do is you put together your main route. You go point A to point B. You put together your main route, let's say build it out on Strava, prefer paved roads option. So in the premium, you can, do the route builder and you can prefer paved roads. You can prefer hilliest route or flattest route. Select the Strava, segment. And then you can also, build that route out, but then proof it against the Street View. And so what I'll do, and this is what I've been doing for the impossible routes, because I've never been to these places. Well, I can't pre-ride 700 miles. You can't.
Be right back.
So I'm like up the Street View, I turn the little guy and then you can kind of see, oh, that's definitely dirt. Okay. Noted. And I put like a little note, or on my map, or I'll just put a mile marker station on there, and that seems to be a pretty good lead. And then the last thing you can do is look at the satellite imagery. So Landsat imagery, there's satellites flying all over. I've got the Gaia GPS app, which I use for different map layers, and that allows you to look at private property layers. That'll allow you to look at sort of the different Landsat views. There's winter, summer, and then fresh sat, which is the most recent update. Kind of take a look there. But doing the, really sleuthing on the laptop, that's the way to go. And then the mobile is sort of like, okay, I'm in the field. Might have to make an edit. And then always come prepared. Even if I'm riding, with the road bike, I really don't like riding tires smaller than 28C anymore, honestly, because get away with some pretty decent gravel on the road bike. Road, I just, it's kind of a little bumpy. And, I was like, okay, well, that's enough gravel for me today. If I'm on the Grail, then I'm like, yeah, bring it on. I want to be off the pavement as much as possible. And that was yesterday's route. And so routing to your equipment, pretty key. The other thing too is crowdsourcing information. That's probably my last and best tip, is that you can crowdsource information pretty well on Facebook groups, on just looking at other routes in the area, looking at Strava segments. Sometimes if you go to a Strava segment, you see the leaderboard. You can click on the activity and then you'll see which bike the person used.
Look at that. Super smart. Probably should have done that when I was doing my thing there.
Yeah, that one's really good. And then I'll even set a comment like on that person's activity. Hey, was it underwater like when you went through, or was the whole thing mud? And they'll be like, oh no, it's totally hard packed, super fast. So if you do the detective work, you can glean a lot. If you look at the speed. So if you look at a hill climb and the KOM is 600 VAM, on a 5% grade, it's off-road and it's nasty.
Right. Okay.
And if the VAM is 400 VAM, then it's like, it has to be glass smooth, because there's no way you can do a 6% grade at that kind of VAM unless you're doing more than 500 watts. So it's just impossible. So you can kind of sleuth quite a bit. It takes a little work, but again, that's where, talking to your friends on out there in the social world, pretty powerful.
That's a fantastic idea. I love the idea of crowdsourcing, because who doesn't want to talk about their ride? Like even I hear stuff from totally random people, like, what's that? Or whatever it is. I only get like 5 messages on Strava like a week. So it's like, hey, that's different than all the other noise that I have. I love it. Yeah. Those are
it's good stuff. It's fun. And it's, again, it's a community. I think that's a part of the sort of endurance scene that we're in, is people like to share like to sort of share their routes. And a big part of the Impossible Routes is we're going to do this promotion to try to have people share their routes, hashtag Impossible Routes, or add Impossible Routes in their sort of, routes. And it might be a 25-mile gravel route, unique to them mission. It's something that hasn't been ridden in that configuration, or they have never ridden it. For them, they're not sure. Does it go? Could be, who knows? And that's part of the fun.
I love it. I could see, this seems to me to have a lot of parallels to like the sort of the Everesting challenge, where people, outside, right, got to find a unique place to do it. There's a lot of preparation that goes into it. Just the popularity around that has grown. But I could see some parallel where people sort of like, they have to submit the ride and submit what the epic thing was about it. People will fill out a form. You put them up, if you give them, famous place on a web page, and they can buy your gear or whatever that is. Like, people love that. I don't know. I think.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, one thing we've learned this year is that, the challenge can be yours. Something even cooler when you've got a personal challenge that's a mission, like riding to the Boston Marathon. I mean, that's for you, that creates the significance. And I think when we're looking for our own impossible routes, that would be one of my top tips. If you're trying to ride, from Buffalo, the Canadian border, to Boston, and that's, where you always go to visit your family during the holiday, or, your grandparents were from Buffalo, or, there's some historical significance to the route, or there's some graphic significance, like, running across the Grand Canyon. I mean, these things are they're sort of fun, and when you've got a good one.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think there's like that, there has to be a little bit of like the anticipation. Yeah. Also like a little bit of healthy fear. Like, something, there has to be that knife's edge of like, I'm not riding my, bike on the edge of the Grand Canyon.
Yeah.
But at the same time, for me, this is, I'm definitely going outside my comfort zone.
Oh yeah. If you're scared, it's a good one.
I love that. That's so awesome. That's fantastic. Okay, so I'll definitely send people to the Impossible Route, and you've got an agenda coming. Is it listed on the site so people can kind of see like what you're up to?
Not yet, but I wanted to get a little bit more of Death Valley fleshed out, and then we'll put up other challenges and the dates. But generally speaking, we're doing Trans-Appalachian Lost Roads end of May, end of June. We're going to head out and do Glacier to Teton on the western route. And then, that one will be end of July. End of June will be Cascades. So the Cascades, Lost Roads sort of. So, we'll get a little bit more detail in there and keep on building that stuff out. But stay tuned on the Instagram. We'll be posting some cool stuff, and stay tuned for the debut on the Vegan Cyclist YouTube channel for the Impossible Route Death Valley. It's quite a show. It's gonna be good.
I can't imagine. Like, and I just like to watch him suffer. That guy has no limits. Which is awesome. Again, that great connection. Well, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate it, Jeremiah. I'm sure I'll be in touch and talk more about it. Would love to kind of catch up as well. But do keep me posted if you guys are releasing something, or there's something as like, hey, check out this ridiculous thing that just happened. Pass it along. All right.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Patrick.
All right, man. You take care. Have a good one.
All right. You too. See ya.
Yeah. Bye-bye.